Welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast. My name is Matt Wood, and this is episode 79. Today's episode is a little different. It's a conversation between Noel Diaz of Purity Wine, the Steady Wine Bar, and the Richmond Wine Collective. He was also my very first interview for the podcast, way back on episode 2. And Tony Coturri of the Coturri Winery, who has been making natural wines longer than anyone in California. Noel came up with the idea, and we made it happen. They discuss what has changed over the last 50 years in California natural wine, some of the struggles, and the surprising bright spots. There's lots of talk about farming and how wine fits in with the rest of our food. It starts with Tony and I talking casually for a few minutes before Noel joins. Noel and Barry were unfortunately dealing with some vandalism, property damage, and threatening behavior issues by an unhoused person as they were setting up for By the Way this past Sunday. But Noel joins us a few minutes into the episode. You might also hear a little chatter as folks walk by while we record. A reminder that I have a Patreon at patreon.com/IndieWinePodcast. The link is in the show notes also. If you're enjoying the podcast, any amount to help me keep telling wine stories ad-free and available for everyone is appreciated. It's all run independent and out of pocket. Telling a friend or sharing on social media are great ways to help out too. Okay, sorry, long intro. Here we go.
Like the Goldstein clone of Zinfandel was brought into California, or it was 1880s, was known to be a clone that people were using to grow Zinfandel with. Mm-hmm. So, I think obviously the big schism is Prohibition. I mean, that's what really destroyed it from a lot of reasons. And part of it is like varietals that because when they did Prohibition, they would ship by railroad wines, grapes back to New York and Philadelphia and Boston, and then home winemakers would get their grapes, and they needed varieties that have thick skins.
Yeah, so you have like the Alicante Bouchers and things like that.
With Alicante, you can make a double wine.
Yeah, the dark, yeah.
And Zinfandel was out because of bunch rot, and Cabernet was out because the berries were too small.
Yeah.
So if you just it's always kind of mysterious to me to think about those vines that were before Prohibition, what it was like then,
mm-hmm.
What they were doing. Yeah, to put it in perspective, when we were bonded in '79, there was 13 wineries in Sonoma Valley.
Okay, what's your bond number?
4903.
3903.
4903.
4903. Okay.
Yeah. And now there's obviously buildings in the industrial part of Sonoma that have 27 wineries in one building.
Yeah.
30 wine tasting rooms on the square. And, it's gigantic. I mean, even though it's 45 years, that's a lot of growth for 45 years.
Yeah.
So, just in terms of marketing, the 80s were like, it was a dream. If there's only 13 wineries, people come up from the city.
Yeah.
And then gradually, by 2000, I had to get on the road, and then obviously 2001, 9/11 cinched it. But there's just a tremendous amount of growth, and also corporate growth more than anything.
Okay.
And a lot of little wineries like me just went out of business.
You remember about the year that you felt it change?
1999.
Okay.
It was, my first trips to New York were in 99, 2000.
That's when you felt
You had to do it, yeah.
Okay.
Because, in those days, you had to get big or die. I mean, if you couldn't be just what you wanted to be. You had to be, because no distributor would look at you unless you had 400 cases of a particular cuvee.
Okay.
Because they said, by the time we sold it, you'd be sold out, and now it's so opposite, where they'll buy one barrel of wine from some obscure place because it's this and that and this and that. Yeah, the last time I was in New York, 2010, 11. The distributor bought a barrel of wine from the Central Coast. I don't know what. So they bought it in barrel, and then the reps went out and sold it. even before it was bottled.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What how large did the winery grow in that time, or what
I
did your case production max out at?
6,000 cases.
6,000 cases.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
doing it between 100 and 110 tons a year.
Okay.
And a little, I mean, you have to, no forklift, no automation, everything. Well, we had crushers and presses, but everything went through that, and that's it.
Okay.
You know, I had 3 or 4
Yeah.
people working for me full time, and then friends, and you know, it was a big production.
Yeah.
You know, so now, like last year, I only made 4 barrels. The biggest fermentation I had was 2022. I think I did about close to 30 barrels, but that's it.
Okay.
But I just do enough to keep me busy, and not keep me busy, but do tastings at the winery and a little bit of wholesaling.
Are there any years that you've tasted recently that you're especially proud
21
of?
was outrageous.
21.
21 is, you have to put it in context I mean, so 17 we were evacuated because of the fires.
Yeah.
And then 18 and 19 and 20, all the fires in Northern California funneled through our valley on our way out to the bay. And then 21 happened and nothing happened. It's like, how could this be a good year? You know? And it was reminiscent of what we used to be able to do on a consistent basis, year in, year out, without, you know, the drama. And you know, and also the weather patterns were more in clumps than 1 year like this and 1 year like that and 1 year like that. So, you know, 22, 20. I'm going to be pouring 22 and 23.
Okay.
So 22, second week of September, 120 degrees for 5 days. And then 23, we didn't even have veraison till August. And then 24, from the minute the rain stopped, it was 100 to 60, 100 to 60, back and forth through the whole harvest. And the vines were really stressed out.
Yeah.
Even conventionally grown, everything was. I'm all done now. Oh.
Oh, you're fast.
So move this a little closer to Noel.
I brought a little something for us to share, a little something to sip here. This is a little bit of apple, Pinot Noir, and Carignan
Oh, interesting.
as a pet nat. Cheers.
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 Thank you.
Noel,
I've wanted to
take
do,
it, take it
Oh,
away.
I've wanted to do, in the past, when we're putting By the Way together, it's such a community thing that it takes a lot of our time. But I've always wanted to do something like a little discussion beforehand. And then I've been wanting to do a podcast with you for a while because I just wanted to tap into your vibe that you've been doing this for. Yeah, I want to tap into that. It's not just knowledge that you have. It's just this kind of. I asked my son the other day, who plays saxophone, and I said, "Have you ever lost yourself in have you ever become the instrument?" And I feel like you're an example of somebody who's become the instrument. Like this is who you are, and for me, you were a model of how to. Take time and consider our place in the universe. I like how spiritual you are. Not I don't know anything about religion, but you have a spiritual quality. This sense of being a part rather than controlling it. I guess. Yeah.
It's really interesting because it hit like 3 things that have been just brought up this week. One of them is the thought that, you know, I've been making wine commercially since 1979. This is going to be my 46th harvest, right? On one side, that's like, oh my God. The other side, that's only 45 times.
Yeah.
Where if you're a brewmaster, you may do 45 different beers in 1 year. You know, so we don't get information and knowledge from the harvest. We get intuition from the harvest. And that's what you have to work on, because you can't, in 45 years, you didn't see everything. You didn't even see half of what could be going on, weather-wise, socially, economically. I mean, that's not a long time. So it really sparked the idea, and especially what you just said about becoming the instrument. You have to get to the place where you cut, like Steiner says, you cut your head off and you become a passenger in the limousine, and you're just observing. And it's from here. The heart has to talk to you, and that's the really strong part about it.
Yeah, I come from ag roots. My parents were migrant farm workers, and I spent summers working in the fields, working in grapes, picking fruit to make extra money. And when I came from San Joaquin Valley, when I came to the Bay Area for school, I worked in restaurants because I could make a living, but I loved food, and wine was another thing of me to look at as a kind of a cultural a high point, or something of both. Yeah, kind of, it was like art and culture and intellect. It carried so many different. It covered a lot of ground, and the more that I got into it, the more I actually found myself going back into ag and the meaning of it, and the meaning of, like, not, my parents went through the time when there was like industrialized farming, and there was a lot of poisons, a lot of chemicals were sprayed.
Yep.
And the idea of how we can position ourselves, how we can balance the way that we consume but contribute, became important things. And it was part of, like, the local organic. It's funny, I was talking earlier about people really seem to resonate with wanting to know how their food is farmed, but they don't necessarily care so much how the wine is farmed, and they don't also see that wine is food. It's the same thing.
Part of the diet.
Yeah, and what you're talking about earlier too is the idea of that 47,
Well, 45.
45 harvest, 45. And I think too, I don't know that, but it's part of it is, like, do we ever get, I've heard people say things like, oh, that was like 1978, that was like 1983, that was like, how do you guys remember harvest? I look at things and I'm like, the significant ones I remember, oh, that was a traumatic year, that was a hard year, I about lost my mind in that year, and I remember those. But sometimes you get a harvest that just goes really smooth, and you're just waiting. There's this anxiety that you have, and it goes really smooth, and you get to the end of it, and you think, where I was so busy, I was so in it that I just lost myself. People will ask me sometimes, how did you make this wine? And I'll say to them, I'll make up a story, and they're saying to me, you're making it up. And I'm like, well, I am and I'm not. This is kind of maybe not exactly factually correct.
The other Noel was there.
But
the other
for the most part, this is how it was done. And then, yeah, so it's just like that. When I'm working on a little vineyard now, and I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to pull a tractor. I'm trying to figure out how to bend the grass, and it's about 5 acres, and these are 6 feet by 8 feet spacing, and these are old vines, and they don't need a lot of. They kind of like take care of themselves for the most part. I went in and pruned, and we'll see what happens. But I'm seeing the shoots come up, and we'll see what happens with that. But when I'm out there, it does feel like I'm kind of nature bathing.
Yeah, it's a 2-part thing that I'm going to talk about. One in the vineyard, one in the winery. But I have a very dear friend that lives up east of like Arcata in the Indian reservation up there, and he has a vineyard. He is a very, very successful farmer that goes to the farmers markets. And he wanted to start getting into wine, and there was a vineyard on the property that he sold the grapes. He wanted to, anyway, long story short, he said, Tony, how do you know when it's time to prune? No, not prune, but pick. How do you know when it's time to rack? How do you know when it's time to bottle? I said, Grady, the wine talks to you, just like your vegetables do. They say, hey, middle of the night, we're ready. You need some water. I mean, if you're tuned into it, they talk to you. And the same in the vineyard. The 22 vineyard was 22 harvest was particularly difficult. If you remember, we were talking earlier, 120 degrees a week before the 15th of September. So everything came in. I mean, it wasn't like you go out there and you check the grapes and look and say, oh no. It's like, who can I get to pick? How can we get all this fruit in before it just turns into raisins? So at the end of the harvest, the wines came out good, but there again, even the experience, I was totally lost. I'd never been in California the week before harvest, 120 degrees. Never happened. Never happened before. It was never 120 degrees on Sonoma Mountain since 1961, which I could attest to. So,
wow.
So it happened. And as it turned out, it was a really delightful vintage, big fruit, nice city, everything was right in line. So I went out at the end of the harvest, and I was just kind of like feeling sorry for myself again, just like I did on that reel. But the vineyard, I'm not capable anymore of taking care of it the way it should be. I can't grub out the poison oak. I can't grub out the blackberries, and then the squirrels hide acorns out there, and there's trees growing, and I go,
that's where the trees come from.
yeah, they hide them out there, the little suckers. You need a dog to check. But anyway, so I said, I was like really feeling sorry for myself. I'm feeling sorry for the vineyard. And clearly, as clear as I'm talking now, the vineyard talked and said, hey, look, boss. He always calls me boss. But you did what you did. You planted the vineyard in 74. It's 50 years old. We did it. If it goes back to being a forest again, fine. If you get some young people to come in and start taking care of it, that'll be fine too. But that whole idea of longevity is meaningless because you're gone. I mean, you can't control the future. You can only control now. And when I got that relief of saying, well, that's it, because there's a lot of issues in succession for my winery, and none of them worked out. So I said, there another. Oh God, but hey, it is what it is.
Okay, so you have a winery on site, which is now much less common. It's almost impossible to get a winery.
Yeah.
And so you have a place, and you have no succession. In terms of, will somebody take it over eventually? Because that winery is attached to that land, basically.
Right.
So that license can be.
It could be transferred. It could be moved. But there's nobody. It's interesting because there's nobody that. I mean, I'll just say it straight. I had young people that I had harvests with, and I showed them how to do it. You can't teach anybody how to make wine. You show them the moves, and they've got to get it from here, just like the saxophone player. You have to get it from your heart. But long story short, so I got them, like maybe X amount of them. I said, hey, I got a bunch of them together. I said, hey, why don't you guys help me out? And we could do a joint venture. Oh no, it's too much work. You don't have a forklift. You don't have, you don't have all the stuff that makes it easy. And it's true, because that's part of, the cane now. I just wore myself out when the body's worn out. But in succession, the next people take over, and the old man gets to sit on the chair and point his cane around.
Point, yeah.
But that's not an option. But that's the way it goes. The vines and the wine, they don't care. Their purpose is done.
I wanted to ask you. So it's 50 years ago, obviously. So memory might not be as crisp on it, but what set you on the path to make wines and tend the vineyard the way you do? Was it
right? So
that was the only way?
Perfect question. Both my grandfathers made wine in San Francisco during Prohibition times, because I was born in 1949. My dad was born in 1917. My grandfathers were born way into the 1800s. So I mean, there's that long of a span. But all those years they were making wine in San Francisco.
Okay.
And then when I was just a kid, 8, 9 years old, my grandfather on the Italian side was still making wine. I mean, he wasn't making a lot. He just had an open top barrel, literally, and he was fermenting wine. And I opened it up and it had that smell. And it just really, I mean, it was one of those moments in life where it just something snapped, something clicked, something says, I've been here before. And that was sort of set me on the path. And my parents were able to buy the property the winery's on in 1961. And then in 1963, I started making wine on the property with my father. He knew the winemaker at Italian Swiss Colony. He was a Swiss man. And in those days, they just said it was that big, now it's owned by Gallo, that big, huge, probably 1,000 acres vineyard on 101. But anyway, we could go in there. It was a mixed black vineyard, and we could pick whatever we wanted. So some years we did Zinfandel, some years we did Petit Syrah. So that really started it on that was the impetus of me going forward in this thing.
So when you planted, you decided on Zinfandel.
Absolutely.
And because of its historical relationship to Noma,
well, that really it's kind of a silly thing, but nonetheless, when we were young and drinking wine, in a blind tasting, we didn't know anything from anything. But when I tasted a Zinfandel or I tasted a wine and understood what Zinfandel was, the light bulb went off. And once you know where Zinfandel is, then all the other varietals fall in place, along with it. So that's, when I was in full production, 6,000 cases, half of it was Zinfandel. I mean, it was just always my grape. I mean, I had affinity to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they make great wines. They make in a lot of different voices.
Right.
Well.
And the other thing is there's no trellis system. It's like the vineyard you have now. The stakes are gone and the vines are standing there, little trees. And I made a wine that I called Albarello that was Zinfandel influenced, and Albarello is Italian for little trees, and that's exactly what they are.
Yours are own rooted?
No, St. George.
So I think the vineyard that I have are own rooted. I can't find the grafts, and they're 120 years old, and we were kind of looking back at it. But you've been dry farmed from the beginning.
Yeah, 2 years irrigated, and then the third year pulled the water off.
And you just pulled it like just cold.
That's it. Yeah. And it's interesting in the 22 vintage when it was 120 degrees, I got some Merlot from down the street, and they were irrigating it every day to keep the vines alive, because when you drip, it goes down maybe a foot before it spreads out. Whereas with obviously dry farm, that root goes down as deep as it needs to. And it went through I thought for sure I'm going to lose the vineyard this year. Came through it beautiful, had a good crop.
Well, the vines, I suppose that there's limits to where the vine can shut itself down to go dormant. But if it feels stressed, it's going to just check out. In terms of like if the grape isn't ripe, it's still going to go. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, that could happen. It also could start pulling juice from the grapes to keep itself alive.
Wow.
But it's the respiring Zinfandel just has that ability, those big leaves, that they shut down at 85 or 90 degrees, maybe 80.
Like something like the 90.
But then they also are respiring enough to keep themselves going. But I've heard of vineyards that dry farm vineyards forever, and they shut down at 17, and that's it. 17 degrees, 17 bricks, and that's as far as you can go.
Something as just a little side note for farming, I'm noticing a lot of wild carrots. Do you have that?
No.
Is that something I've never experienced it. There's carrots everywhere.
Oh, interesting.
And and I definitely confirmed they're carrots, and they grow at where the roots are. And I did some research, and because this vineyard's been farmed, as far as we know, it's been farmed organically forever. The person that had it before I've taken it over, Santa Rosa owns it. They're leasing it. And the person who had it before, had it for 25 years, and he farmed it organically. So the research that I looked into was, and there's the little lizards all over too.
Well, the thing is, the reason why it was laid out, because I laid mine out at at 10 by 12, which was similar to what you guys on the hillside. But anyway, long story short, the reason why they did it that way, so you could cultivate it both ways and just have a little bit of hoeing around the vine.
Yeah.
So you never needed to herbicide it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm in it now, and I'm starting to get into the grasses and how to manage the grasses, and I'm waiting. I'm trying to like tip them over to try to create a cover.
Yeah.
But what else happens is you get the neighbors going, when are you going to cut that? When are you going to cut that grass?
Well, just a really, if you could get in there just with a weed eater, even for 5 acres, or obviously, just mow it. You don't need to cultivate it. You can just mow it and lay down the grass as a mulch, and then after you pick the grapes this year, then go in with a disc, open it up, seed it, close it, and you got it.
So do you till
We
every
might
once in a while?
lightly till it, but by and large, we just mow it. Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's just been done, and we've got like this much mulch. It's a good year for cover crops. And then because in the swing of things, if you do your inputs in the fall, they'll be ready for when the vine breaks out in the springtime. But conventional farmers do all their inputs in the spring, and then it gets wasted because the vine doesn't need it in October or September. So it's following the season. But it's so interesting because that need to have a vineyard look somewhat in some people's mind clean, I mean that which would never happen is that just dirt. I mean, that is insane to have something look like that. But like with what you're aiming at, and is just lay that down and make a mulch.
Mulch, that's right. There's in terms of, I was reading that we're running out of, is it phosphorus, like for fertilizer. We're starting to have problems with fertilizer because we're not taking care of the soil. We're not allowing for a turn of nutrients to come, release, then go back into the soil and create soil that can sustain
Right.
growth.
Balance, right.
Yeah, balance. And that's definitely was number one on my list as well.
Well, the other thing is that is also a lot of people cut their grasses too soon, and they come back. The grass isn't going to stop growing until it seeds. And so that's another thing
right, yeah.
with your neighbors saying, "Oh my God," you say, "Wait a minute, I only want to do this once."
Yeah.
If you do it beforehand, the grass is going to come back this big and have flowers on it and then seeds.
That's what I was telling people too. I'm like, as soon as the rain stops, I'll take care of the grass before it turns brown. If it's not brown, it's not a fire hazard at this point. But that's definitely a concern with everybody. Everybody's very touchy about
But
it.
you still, that's where you can afford to do it. Is if you let that grass seed, your job is done. But if you cut it too soon, you're going to be cutting it 2 or 3 times later.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid. And labor is like, I tell people, same thing with the wineries. Like, I tell people, you want to look at it in terms of if you're a farmer and you've got to take care of 20 different things, you're going to put as much time, you're there, you're ever present, but you're going to take care of it's always triage. You're going to take care of what needs to be taken care of now, and then you're also going to take care of the things that need. It's a list of priorities. And you want to work efficiently, because if you find yourself wasting, then that's just a day you could have done something else that's important.
Exactly.
And the whole thing too, like when you were making wine and not using sulfite, was it a see, that to me is like, is that the hippie side, or is that your ecology mind, or was it kind of like, why put something if you don't need to add something?
Exactly. That's my grandfather. He never put sulfites in. Didn't even know about sulfites.
Yeah.
And sure, coming from the '60s. I was a teenager, so I was definitely a hippie in the '60s. And it's stripping down everything, but at the same time, what's needed and what's not. And and good grapes take care of themselves. It's like a good vineyard.
Right. It's interesting too. Like, I've noticed I can make a wine that's bulletproof, and that when I do, nothing added, nothing in it. It's organic. I make it, and it's just from the inception and into the aging and bottling. and even I noticed, like, just wine in bottle for me it takes a long time to age. I've got stuff that I have stuff that from 2015, so that was my second year of making wine. I open it up and it hasn't aged at all. I don't see
Very
any.
slow, yeah.
It's very slow, and I know I tend to pick a little more on acid. I like that. I like a riper wine too. I like a fuller wine too. But I just like in my mind thinking, why is this wine bulletproof and these aren't? Like you, I was hearing Gideon from Close Around, talk about ferments, they'll finish. And he says, they'll finish, they'll eventually finish. And I don't know that I've made that experience, but I think like the way you pick on riper side. So you've got like a higher potential alcohol. So I wonder if that helps the stability of the wine.
It does too, but the other side of it is that I'm also being accused of having high acid wines. So I'm having grapes coming in at 26, 27.
With acidity.
With great acidity.
People talk about acid dropping out. I don't notice it unless I guess.
The only acids that drop out are the immature acids, the acids you don't want in the wine. They drop out. Good acids in Zinfandel, tannic acid in Cabernet doesn't drop out. That's what you have to ripen the fruit. I don't care about the sugar. I mean, obviously I do. I can't say I don't, but I'm more in how's the acids ripening. Because the big difference between all the growing regions is hang time. How long could you hang that fruit out there and to pick it? Where I'm at, I have the beauty of the bay and the ocean. So at night it gets really cold.
We can wait.
We can
here.
wait and
Yeah.
wait and wait and wait.
That's so fascinating that you say that. A certain kind of uniqueness. I don't really. When people ask me about terroir, I talk about, okay, do I believe in? I believe in terroir, but I don't. It's always hard for me to access it for a normal human being, like what it even means. But in talking to you about that point right now, that is a great place to be in geographically for us. We're a place where we can wait. We don't have to rush. Sometimes we do, but most of the time, if you look at like a flow, you can actually hold out. And when you're talking about like sugars aren't that important, they're not the primary decision of harvesting. Do you go out and do you go out and feel the clusters?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people.
Refractometer and the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, so this will be a really good experience for you with this dry farm vineyard because the crop levels are lower because it's an older vineyard. So you're really going to have to work on acidity because those vines are going to be really acidic when they're young, the grapes. So you really have to get that, you get them up to like 24. You get it up to 24 and you say, oh man, this, the pH is like in the low threes. You go, oh yeah, this is ready. But then you can hang that fruit out for another 2 weeks. The sugar will go up a little bit, but it'll just stay there. And then all of a sudden the sugar goes up. That means the acids have finally matured and you pick and it's perfect.
Wow. Yeah, I've worked vineyards over the years. I've worked them here as a patchwork because you get them leases. People have a vineyard, they can't take care of it, and then they want to give it to you. And I go in there and I start farming it organically, and then they start saying, "What are you doing?" And I try to minimize if it's irrigated, how much I have to irrigate to keep them happy and to keep the vines, because I don't know if the roots are up on the top or if they've had a chance to dig deeper. But looking at this vineyard that I have, I pretty much feel like I can have it for as long as I want it. It's also they've got a salamander there or something that's protected. So I think they don't want anybody to disturb it, I guess. I haven't seen any salamanders. I've seen the lizards. I haven't seen the salamander yet.
Well, yeah, those vines are, and the other interesting thing, they're deep, but they only go down as deep as they need to go. They're not like 100 feet in the ground. They're just down 3 or 4 feet. And then when the vine senses that there's drying coming up, July, August, time to start ripening the fruit. So you go through, you go out of vegetative growth into reproductive growth. The tips of the canes all burn off, and you know that your harvest is right over there.
Wow.
So that vine, that's the other reason Zinfandel is a very communicative grape. It talks a lot. It's a California grape. It's always telling you something, but it'll tell you when you see the tips burn off, then you know that vine is in reproductive growth. and it stopped growing canes, stopped growing tentacles. It's going to ripen that fruit. You just keep your eye on it. Yeah, I mean, you don't even need a refractometer. You don't need anything. Just walk through there and listen. You got
That's
it.
what I want to do. This is the one where I just want to be able to go out there and feel it and sense it. And I want to feel the bunches, and I want to just I can do whatever I want. Like, you know, I have an obligation to nature, and I want to serve the vines. I've seen a lot of them, these guys, these poor guys, they're so old, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, first year I've always said, first year I look. The second year, I try to help.
Are the arms pretty strong, or are they breaking off?
Some of them are breaking off.
Yeah,
Some of them are hollow in the middle.
Yeah, I know.
And
That's what I did. I had to finally get an electric chainsaw, and every vine in the vineyard, I have about 5 acres too, felt the chainsaw. 'Cause it got to the point, either you do that or you're going to lose the vineyard.
right, yeah, and also looking at, I've got some areas where they tipped them over, and there's a bunch of suckers that kind of look like asparagus tips coming up, and then I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to cut away, and what do I keep, and so I've got, I'm excited to see what it wants to. These are old roots.
Well, look at it. They're 3 times older than you are, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's amazing
more.
to be working with something that old.
Yeah, yeah.
And in my case, it's just, you know, I'm 75 now, and I put that vineyard in when I was 24, and it just, you know, it's not an ego thing, because if you have ego in this thing, you're done.
They're
You're
old
finished.
friends.
They'll kick your ass, but they're there. They're old friends, and you know, you went through it with them. You know,
Yeah, you've grown up with them.
We grew up with them, and
Yeah.
it's a privilege. You know, you took on something that very, very few people are ever going to have the experience of.
Yeah.
Working with something that's over 100 years old, in my case, 50 years old. Wow.
Yeah, it's moving when I get out there,
And that native yeast that's going to be on those vines, you're going to tear it up, man. You better let those things get up to 27, though. I'll be out there with you.
I want to
Get
let
them
it,
right.
I want
Get
to let
them
them right.
really
Yeah.
right. And don't worry about it. Yeah, you'll have fun. You'll have fun. You'll learn so much.
Now, so you said your parents helped buy the property.
They didn't help by it. They bought it.
They bought it.
I was 14 years old or 13 years old or something.
And then, so when you were coming up and you were making, I remember one time you told me at your peak, you processed something like 250 tons. Do I remember that right?
110 was the most. At
Oh,
my
110.
property, yeah.
Okay.
You
That's
said
still a
about
lot.
6,000
a-
cases or so?
Tons. Yeah, it's 6,000 cases.
That's a
you've been there.
small winery.
I know.
mean,
They had to back the truck up the road. Everything was done by hand.
And that road.
And it's even worse now. Yeah, but hey. But that's it. You know, I mean, that's what it takes to make good wine. You got to be involved with it. You know, you have to be involved with it. It can't be over there. It's got to be right here.
And how did you respond? You've just seen people talk about rhythms and things come and things go in the wine business. Like now we're dealing with this kind of like this temperance movement of somewhat of an anti-alcohol, which I've always kind of agreed with the idea that alcohol and there's something about us genetically. We need mood enhancers, some kind of drug, some kind of something.
Sure.
And alcohol, like I tell people, beer is different. You can't drink beer like wine. You can't drink spirits like wine. You can't smoke weed like wine. And that wine has this very, very, it fits this very almost perfect space of social interaction.
Look at it like this, Noel. This is what I tell people, and I think it drives people crazy because I'm not a religious person per se, but Christ's first miracle was changing water into wine, and that's what
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
We turn water, the rainwater, especially this vineyard now, no irrigation, into wine.
Right.
I think it's a cornerstone of our culture. That fact of making wine was obviously made even before then, and that a religion became the Western religion, Christianity. One of the cornerstones is wine.
Yeah. Well, I also look at wine. as a cultural thing, as a preservation of energy, and that's one of the other. But
Right.
it wasn't just a preservation of energy, because there's so many other ways to do that. But it is something that happens when you drink, and the alcohol starts to take effect, and what it does to us socially. And sure, there are times we get in fights, but we also connect in a lot of ways to spiritually to the
Oh yeah,
universe.
I mean, it brings you right back, But yeah, but it's something that I think that we in Western culture should really embrace and understand the significance of wine in our culture, of all because we were talking earlier about all the agriculture that goes with it, all the things that grow up about it. So you have a region where they're growing wine, and then pretty soon they're growing vegetables that are compatible with the wine, and then you're having animals that you're growing there and cooking them in such a way, and the wine is all part of that culture. It isn't, which we kind of miss in California because it's such a Garden of Eden here. But if you go over to Bordeaux, or if you go to the south of France, they have everything's there. All the local foods.
It all works together.
It all works together,
Yeah.
and that's beautiful. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. It is very much. I agree that like people will say, well, what's natural wine, and I'll tell them, well, for me, it's a response to industrialization. And I think when it started, if you look at back with Kermit Lynch and the Gamay wine, or not the Gamay, the Beaujolais winemakers,
Gang of Four.
yeah, the Gang of Four, and saying, okay, we don't want industrialized, we don't want these chemicals, we don't want to look at this as industrialized. This is all like what we're just talking about: culture, handwork, working the land and connecting with the community. When I look at that, of these fads that come and they go, how have you responded when Parker came through and Spectator, and they were looking for a certain fashion in the 90s, and there was also what happened when
So in the mid 80s, farmers were calling me up. Old man Rossi had a beautiful old vine Zinfandel. Said, Tony, I picked the grapes and Gallo didn't want them. Will you take them?
Wow.
I mean, that was all the way to that. And then Parker came on. Parker drove up one day and he stayed like 3 or 4 hours, and we just talked just like this. He's a good man. I mean, I don't know where he ended up at or whatever his deal is, but he put us on the map. I mean, especially because I was talking earlier, when we started, there was 13 wineries in Sonoma Valley. So the 80s were my time. I mean, I never had all I needed is a telephone, and I could sell every drop. There's no wineries, 13. People come up from the city. Oh, well, we can't get in there. We'll go see Coturri. They didn't know about natural wine or anything. They say, hey, I like this wine. Yeah, good. All right, here we go.
So it was easier to sell back then?
You never even had to leave your property. There's only 13 wineries. Then by 1999, 2000, I was buying airplane tickets to New York like a crazy man. But everything just swung so quickly.
That's one of the things that I've tried to avoid, is the grind of traveling and sales.
Yeah, I had to do it. I mean, I would have been out of business. Yeah. So you talk about the cycles. 2001 was the first real decline. I mean, we were lucky when we started in '79. Not credit card, bank loans were 25% interest. It was a really, really bad time.
Wow.
And thank God I couldn't borrow any money. I mean, I tried, I couldn't get any. And then, but the beginning of the 2000s is when all hell broke loose in our business. And then '08 was like, it's not as bad as this one, I have to say that, but it was bad. I mean, it was really bad.
That's one of the other things that I've had plenty of conversations with people with, and it is, I've worked with distribution from time to time. I don't really like it. It's a huge expense, taking something close to 50% of the
Not
sale.
close to.
Yeah,
50%.
taking 50% of the sale. Every dollar that gets sold through distribution is shared 50-50.
Right. Yep.
And it's really hard to make a living. And I've seen people scale up, and every time you scale, you have more expenses, and then you got to cover your expenses, and it becomes kind of this a loop that is becomes self-fulfilling, but doesn't really like answer the questions that you want to answer,
Right,
which is
right.
how do I stay in
Last
Yeah,
year,
business?
feeding the
last
beast
year,
kinda.
farmers were calling me up and saying, "Hey,
Right.
Tony, just pay for the picking. You could have the grapes." I ain't gonna fall for that again, because that's only one part. You got a long ways from the day you pay for those grapes to pick them, even till they come out
To
in the
your
bottle.
return, right.
And then, what's the economy gonna be like when you finally do bring those things to market? It's better to have less wine than more wine.
Well, the other thing that I tend to say that can be controversial is that one of the things that we don't do, we'll have little areas like Sonoma has a little marketing, right? Sustainable Sonoma. Lodi has the Lodi, as in terms of the ag, helping the ag. But like as a marketing group, like domestic winemakers, we really don't have something that says, "Hey, support domestic." And I've complained about this. You're in a lot of cool retail, and you're in a lot of cool restaurants. I get a couple here and there, and it's nice. But when I go shop to these places, the shelves are 75, 80% full of import.
Yep.
When I go to Europe, I don't have the same thing. And I remember talking to my importer, my New York importer who's French, saying, well, European people in ag and winemaking, they get subsidies. He's like, they don't really get subsidies. What they do get is they get guarantees. They get healthcare, they get education, and they get low, very, very low interest loans.
The thing is, by our law, if you're importing a product that's being produced in this country, wine, it can't be subsidized by the government. But in Europe, the vineyard and the winery, there's no difference. So they subsidize through the vineyard.
Right.
And that's what's killing us.
Right.
That's what's killing us.
That's why I try. I've talked to people and the two articles. Esther Mobley wrote about this, and I was DMing on Instagram with Eric Asimov, telling him, because he was giving out incorrect information, and they were saying that this was going to affect us. Like for example, I'm talking about the tariffs now. As a little side note, the tariffs are going to affect us domestic producers negatively. And I said the last time they did it, our sales went up because we become more competitive on our
It'd be
yeah.
the same. A bottle of our wine, a bottle of French wine would be the same.
We have more parity, and people will say, "Well, I was talking to my wife. People are saying, "Oh, I have an Italian restaurant. What kind of wine am I going to serve?" And my wife says, "How about you serve? How about California? How about
Where you live.
Why
Where
does
you
it
live.
exactly?" And that's this kind of like, I feel sometimes like I'm a broken record, but our lives could be much easier if we didn't have to do what you're talking about, which is hop on a plane and go negotiate sales. I don't mind working on sales. I do it all the time. But when it's like, I also have to keep my business afloat. I have to be here to make the wine, to take care of the wine, to be in the vineyard. I want to be in the vineyard. I don't want to be a disconnect. And it's interesting to kind of like, in this time when there's like less consumption, it's like, okay, well, at least we could focus on go buy something that was made locally to support that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see that the kind of like the trends as they come and they go. I don't know. People ask me how you're doing. They'll be like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm happy. I love what I do, which I get that from you, Tony. And that's one of the inspirations, that I see you have the struggle, but I also see you have the heart.
Yeah, that's the thing, is somehow you get through it. And then when you get through it, you don't know how you did it.
Yeah.
You did it.
I've said that to people. I said, if I had to
know
go
what I do.
back.
How come you're still there? I don't know. I have no idea. I think that actually God hates me and keeps me there, rather than say, "Here, Tony, here's a nice, like here's a nice little retirement." And you're like in France, when you get to be 65 and you've got somebody to take over your winery, they take over the winery, and the government gives you more money than you ever made as a winemaker. I was talking to Texier, and he said, "Yeah, Tony, I'm going to retire, and I'm going to travel the world." And I said, "I'm never going to retire. I mean, I don't have that opportunity, but that's the way it is." And how much is that worth? That's worth. So if you could do that when you're 65, you got at least 20 years of living, of not having to worry about, what's going to happen today,
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing. Like people are saying, oh, okay, I went in, I had to buy glass, and I spent $1 more a case. Where that's the first, yeah.
I'd be gladly pay $1 more. I mean, my last bill, they had it, it was $9.95 and all this. And then at the end, tariff fee, $250. So, they say, oh, the tariffs are going to be good for us. Yeah, maybe for selling wine, but we still got to buy bottles and corks and all the other stuff.
We do. I think that if we didn't have it, it wasn't such a challenge to compete against the imports to sell. At least we'd be able to sell more. And if we could sell through, like I price my wine to be fairly priced, but I price it also ideally, if I sell it all, to make a living. That doesn't take into account when you get a vat that decides it wants to become acetic, and then it's like,
or
okay.
you come down here and the homeless guy breaks your window, or kills your car.
Yeah.
Or the car dies.
Just incident, life happens.
Life happens. Yeah. I'm finally ahead. Telephone rings.
You got I know, or I know. I tell people like that a lot of times. Like, okay, I got to fix my press. I got to, it's like when you're on ag, it's like I got to fix my tractor. I got to, like, if there's any extra money, it's going to keep the
wheels
capital
going.
Expense.
Yep.
Tony, you said something earlier about this downturn feels worse than 2008. Is there a feeling that you get, or like a reason you feel that way?
Well, I think
there's been prohibition kind of streak?
Since 2008 to now, I bet if we did the statistics, there's probably 70% more wineries than there were in 2008.
Yeah, I feel like in 2008, a lot of large wineries sort of laid off people that started a lot of small wineries. Like it kind of scattered the industry.
I also say, we got all these, social pressures, and then they want us to put a label on the back of the wine that this wine will cause cancer. And I've found out that the research that they brought to the congressional committee was false. It was not right.
I've heard that it was played. They played with the information.
It came from Canada. The other thing is, and I guess I'm guilty of it too. Why didn't one of us go out in front of it and say, hey, look, I enjoy drinking wine every day with my meals, and I'm going to. And you know what? I'm an adult. I can take care of myself. Why don't?
There's been a slow temperance movement, a slow subversive temperance.
Fast. Not slow.
It finally happened.
In the California sober, which is such a crappy thing. We're going to smoke pot instead of drink. Oh, you guys are going to be doing really well for yourselves. I mean, leave us alone. Just leave me alone. That's all. That's all we want. We'll take care of it. But yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah, I think there's this overproduction. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and he said, "Remember that movie, Horace Grump? What's that guy? Grump. What was his name? The actor, the guy. Anyway, you're talking about shrimp and how
Forrest Gump.
Forrest
Gump.
Okay.
When did he make money? Is when the typhoon came through and knocked out half the ships. And he said, "I'm doing great now."
I mean, there is something. I don't wish anybody misfortune. Nobody do I wish misfortune. I think we should all try to find harmony. But there is going to be a bit of a washout at times like this, and and it's also the commitment that people who are. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here. If I got to hold on by my fingernails, I'm staying on. This is who I am for the rest of my life, and I don't feel. I'm not fearful. I don't have real fear because I do kind of feel like like you said, like if I had to go back 10 years ago, or if I had to go back when I was starting, that would have scared the shit out of me. That would have, because I'm in a place here, and this is our second, this space in Richmond that we have, this wine collective, 4,000 square foot warehouse that I've got to pay something like $12,000 a month on, and I'm on my second lease. And I want a community. I don't want tenants. And it's also like, how do I find enough people who can be part of this community that can also help me pay rent, so that if I can pay my share, and everybody else help me pay the other 70 or 80%, then it's like, that's the thing that I have to think about. Then it's like we were talking about earlier. Then I got to look at not just like fruit costs, but I got to think about like renting a truck. I got to put gas in that truck. That's like, those are like, when you think about what am I going to pay per ton? How many cases am I going to make? How am I going to sell this? Where am I going to sell this at what proportion? And then you look at distributor who then wants to take you down to something, then you're just like, I'm like, it just drives you crazy. I can't think about it in the way of like, I just hope.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it. It's all negotiable. You know, you just gotta put your hat on and say, look, you know, my I just sent a load to Chicago. Guy was happy for everything he could get. Everything he could get.
Wow.
What do you got, Tony? Oh, I'll take it. Okay. Then I shoot an email to my distributor in New York. I said, look, I'll do this for you, but I want half in front, and I want the other half 30 days after it lands.
There.
Never returned
Yeah.
my email. What the fuck?
Right.
You know, and the thing is, she's going to want samples. And at 45 years in the business, I'm not sending anybody samples. What am I going to send you bad wine? What are you thinking?
All that's doing is taking the price that you agreed on and cutting it down lower. That's just a different way of getting you to provide a lower price.
Oh yeah. It's bad business, really bad.
And
business.
and that thing that you talk about where, so we've got, people don't realize it's 60 days. The general terms are when you send something out to a distributor, they got 60 days to pay you. They got 30 days. Yeah, and if you get paid.
90 days is probably closer to it.
They got 30 days. Well, what I was told is they got 30 days to sell and 30 days to collect, and then they turn around and pay you. And if you ask somebody, and what will happen sometimes, and this is Jared from Donkey and Goat told me this years ago. He said, be careful when you get into distribution, because here's what can happen. If they're not paying you, but they want to keep you in the market because you've got what are called positions or placements, you got to send them, but they haven't paid you. So now you're going to send them more wine. Now they've got you, and they've got control of you, and there are states here for distribution where you're married, you're actually legally, it's basically a marriage to the distributor that you cannot ask for a divorce on. You can ask, but they tell you whether or not they're going to release you.
Well, and just to make a little after note on that too, when that wine comes from Europe through customs, it's got to be paid then. They don't give them terms.
Right.
They don't give them terms, you know, and so they'll give us terms. So I mean, it's always we're the second thought of a distributor, and they lean on us. So, I mean, now in my, after all this time, I can finally say, I want 50% up front, and I want another 50 in 30 days when it lands, or you don't get the wine.
Yeah. See, one of the reasons I don't work with distributors because I don't have that kind of credit, like that ability to do. You've been around long enough. You've got that. There's next. They next in line.
Well, you know, but there's again, if as a community we did that, it would be in a different world too.
Right.
But then somebody will break ranks, and you know, because they do that for imports. They pay. They have promissory notes. You can't go. You and I take a flight over to Paris, and we go to a winery and say, "Yeah, we'll take 1,000 cases, get them to Marseille, and we'll ship them."
Yeah.
No. Who are you?
Here's in New York, and I know there are other states that have this similar kind of thing. I don't know them all, but like in New York, if you're a distributor and you're selling wine and an account doesn't pay you, you put them on a do not sell to list.
Oh yeah.
So nobody can sell to them until they settle up with you.
Exactly.
So it's a power that these distributors have. I don't hate distributors.
I hate distributors.
Yeah. Well, I try, but
what I found is the big boys do it, and we little guys got to do it. You change distributors, 5 years. You guys got 5 years. I'm going to go to, especially New York. You can have as many distributors in New York as you want. It's not a franchise state. New York, the biggest market.
Yeah. But then your distributors will also start discounting you, putting you out in the market they'll take a loss just to hurt you.
It's happened to me before.
Yeah. Well, I just want any buyers listening, just try to be a little more compassionate with the domestic producers.
Just bring your money. If you want the wine, bring your money.
Yeah, bring money.
And lots of it.
Help us keep the lights on.
Right.
Let me ask you guys, since we're at By the Way here, and people are starting to filter in. I know you have to get out there and pour your wines pretty soon, but what can people do? Like, what can the average consumer do to help the small to medium-sized
The
independent
consumer
producer.
has to tie into local, regional. Everything that they do should be local and regional, and wine should be part of it. We can't just pull it out for food, for clothing, for if you're hiring somebody to work. It's got to be on the block, and that's what Europe's about. Even now, you go down to the square. There's all the people around the square. I mean, we Americans will go to the cheapest price. If it comes from Chile, if it comes from South Africa, if it comes from France, that's what they want. They want the cheapest bottle. And we can't make wine at those prices. So yeah, I mean, the consumer has to really start seeing not American, which obviously, we love America. They got to start seeing the Bay Area. We got farms here. We've got everything here. Support it all. Well, where'd that come from? Well, I'm kind of looking for something closer to home. Guy down the street. Because I always say, who's the biggest buyer of organic vegetables in the country? Walmart. And Walmart's not buying vegetables from Joe down the street. He's buying it from the rainforest and from Holland and everything. And plus, it's healthier for you too if you go local. That's what's grown in your climate in your area. This is like our grandparents knew this, and we forgot. Now it's time for us to remember again. Personally, that's what I think.
Right.
You'll be healthy. There's no tomatoes in January. There's no tomatoes. Don't buy them. Where are they coming from?
Where are they coming from? I agree. It's
And if they can understand that, then they can understand the wine.
treat it like food.
Yeah. And
Buy
that's
it.
a big thing.
Yeah.
Big thing. Especially when you're making these more fragile wines. I mean, I always say, if you bought a chicken, would you throw it in the back of your car and wait 2 or 3 days and bring it out? Oh, of course I wouldn't do that. Well, you're nut. Well, you'll do that with a bottle
Don't
of
do
wine.
that with your wine.
You'll do that. You'll put it. So people come in the middle of the summer. They come here and buy wine. Are you guys in the shade? What are you guys doing? Or you got a hotel? What are you guys doing with this wine? Well, we're just going to drive around. We got other places to go. Leave it here until you're done and come back and pick it up.
We're people out there. We're living. We're your neighbors. Support us. I think you said it. You said it all.
Yeah,
You left me speechless.
Well, yeah. I mean, the farmers markets. You don't have to buy a vegetable at Safeway. You don't have to buy anything at Safeway. Just go right. I bet within a mile there's a farmers market twice a week right here, right?
Right? Yeah. We got a farmers market here in Richmond. Yeah, we've got a couple of them.
Yeah.
So they
definitely.
go to
They're
the
out there.
farmers
here,
market. They come
Yeah.
over to Noel's place, buy a couple bottles of wine, and go home.
Well, that's what we set up for was so that winemakers could come and sell. I mean, I couldn't understand. I'm like, we're all licensed. I don't understand why people don't do this more frequently. We throw a party and we tell people, roll up the car, take cases out. We leave here and we're all happy.
At least
we worked
bottles.
hard.
At least bottles.
I mean, I have worked fairs where my back is killing me at the end of it. I haven't been able to sell wine. Maybe I've made some contacts. You do it because you want to have some visibility,
Yeah.
but
raw. I did raw wine, 8 hours, 2 days in a row. 8 hours. And you know that if you got to go take a piss, that the greatest distributor is going to walk by and say, "Where's Tony?"
I walked by your table. You weren't there.
You weren't there.
That same thing happened to me. That's exactly.
So you're there 8 hours and you can't talk. You're all done. All done. But I love this. I have to say, this is one of the best. I always tell people, this is one of the best wine tastings you could do because you can buy the bottles and it's all local. And I commend you. I mean, I'm not blowing smoke, but I'm really happy that you invited me to this thing.
Thank you so much. I love having you out here, and I appreciate that you took the time to come and join us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
It is definitely a community. And I will be up to visit you. I know you've got some, we talked about, you've got some redwood fermenters that have been,
Yeah.
I want to go up there and take a look at that. Maybe I can do some ferments in the vineyard.
If you get some Gavera, you could bury them. Not Zinfandel. Not Zinfandel. You want to bring Zinfandel home because you got a lot of alcohol there. You got a lot of acidity. If you had some light white grape, they'd throw it in there. But You've got a masterpiece. Oh, you got the oils from Rembrandt.
Oh,
That's what
I'm
he
so
used.
excited.
But hey, think about it. I mean, we're in the ability to here locally to take advantage of a vineyard that's 125, 130 years old.
Yep.
Think about the history.
What cars were barely around when these
They
things were.
weren't
They were
around at all.
probably it was horse and
wagons.
and horse and wagons
Yeah.
were what helped to plant it. What they even did to start it for the water, like. Why was it? Oh, how did they get away with own root? Like
They had a tank in the back of a wagon with a horse pulling it, and they gave 3 or 4 gallons of water to every vine. But that's what they did.
yeah.
That's what they had.
And those vines have started to. Some of them have started to. I don't know what was going on, but some of them have started to actually grow down and taproot. Like the canes have come up
Yeah.
and go down, and they've started to they want to grow again.
Oh,
So-
kind of layering themselves.
Yeah, they're layering. They'll do it in kind of like a little circle that just keeps on
Yeah.
moving out. And those are the things I was like, maybe I shouldn't be pulling these. Maybe I should
You
just
gotta
let
cut
them.
them. You got to cut them. So there might be rootstock under there.
Oh, really?
If the vine is going above, because definitely if that cane roots, it's going to be on its own root.
Right.
And so you have to be. The
I think they are on their own. I just can't see the graft. I can't see any grafts.
Yeah, well, 110 years. Just think about it. 110 cuts. 110 cuts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got. Oh, yeah. I've got. I'm going to show you this picture.
Just be
I've
glad
got
you don't
this
have to
arm.
drive your horse-drawn carriage off the vineyard.
They look like Medusa.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this was great, Matt. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for organizing it. It's great.
And
Very fun.
Thanks for listening today. Noel and Tony both have great insights into the workings of natural wine and how the industry has changed over time. As he mentioned, Tony has seen downturns before, and we all hope the small producers can make it through these challenging times. You can find Noel and Barry's wines at puritywine.net or follow at puritywine on Instagram. Tony's wines can be found at coturriwinery.com or follow him at coturri_winery. You can follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at IndieWinePodcast, and feel free to email indiewinepodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or feedback. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love it if you told a friend or wine lover about it and help spread the word. Rating, reviewing, or donating at patreon.com/IndieWinePodcast helps too. It all goes to offsetting podcast expenses like gas money, podcast hosting, research books, and websites, and allows for more episodes. We'll be back soon with another episode. Have a good one.